We're locked in for the final hour of the Hoffman Show on Team 980. You know what it is, Anthony? You know what today is?
Today is Hump Day.
It's Competition Wednesday, bro.
Oh, it's Competition Wednesday. You're right.
You're gonna learn more about that momentarily. Coming up at 6:30, Anthony and I are gonna compete we're gonna have a takeoff. He's gonna have a bad take, and I'm gonna have a good one.
Ooh, should we actually adopt Competition Wednesday?
I was actually just thinking that. Tell you what, let's hit pick 6, and then we're gonna have a show discussion amidst our discussion of the biggest Commanders headlines of the day.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level, build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
Number 1.
All right. Dan Quinn has laid out exactly how things are going to look for the Commanders this season internally, and now he's slow rolling the external rollout of how he is organizing the week-by-week ways in which he prepares his team for Sundays, and he shared, again, that external rollout with the media today.
As we get started today, you'll see some themes at practice regarding competition, us going against one another. So Monday is really about what we call Tell the Truth Monday, the things that we wanted to see from the game, what'd you emphasize, what'd you like. And then today we call Competition Wednesday. We'll have some good work, skills together to get sharper and sharper, and that'll be all the way throughout the season. Then as we get into the rest of the week, some of the themes will go, but you'll see at practice today really a lot of good on good, and that'll be the case for today and for tomorrow before we shift gears on Friday into preparation for Sunday night. So all that said, wanted to get it rolling with you guys, but give you a little insight onto how we have a philosophy for the week. Each day has its own theme, tell the truth, competition. Tomorrow will be about the ball. Friday you'll see a lot of things about finishing and some game management moments and end of the game plays. So each of the day, just staying into that process for that day.
So that does beg the question, Anthony. Do we need to adopt any or all of these for our radio show during football season? And if the answer is yes, what does that look like?
I say yes, we do. I think we just need to do a little bit more, thinking, flushing out of the actual idea. I think the big picture is yes, but, we got to iron out the minor details.
I mean, Tell the Truth Monday seems pretty easy.
I think that's pretty straightforward.
For them, Tuesday's going to be Take the Day Off Tuesday because, that's their off day. That's not actually what they call it. For us, it's a Vibe Check Tuesday, so we got that. Competition Wednesday, we need ideas. You can tweet me at Craig Hoffman, or if you're watching this later on YouTube, or you want to go find the YouTube if you're listening live right now, and leave a comment. That's going to be a really easy way to give us an idea. What should our Competition Wednesday look like? And then we'll address the Thursday and Friday themes once we officially learn what they are. But I like this idea. Dan Quinn not only programming his football team, but helping program radio shows across the DMV. If they have any level of creativity, which we certainly try to, maybe that's our competition, is to do a better Competition Wednesday than the B. Mitch and Finley show. Those jokers. Anyway, here's what else Dan Quinn had to say about theming out the days and why he thinks it's an important and useful tool.
I think it can just help you lock into where you don't have to worry about the game. You just lock into today. The competing part really is it's us going against one another to really sharpen our skills. And there could be a competition that's not scripted, just a third down competition, for instance, you'll see today, different down and distances. The coaches, the players all have to react into that moment. But more than anything, it's helping one another be at their best. And that's what I like about it. So if we can really compete against ourselves to whatever the pass bar was to see if we can take it further and against one another, the whole room can kind of just lift. And so you don't have to go into the game in that space now. Like today's about getting better and worrying about us and the things that we need to do. And then as tomorrow comes, there'll be a big emphasis on the ball, and it just allows you to stay into those pockets. And if we do that right over the 3 or 4 days, not only will we be prepared, we'll also be ready. And I think there's a difference between the two. Prepared, you're organized, you have it together, but being ready, man, like I can't wait for this game. I can't wait for this moment because I did all these things. And so that's what today brings.
There's some bars, Anthony. You're not going to be prepared. We're going to be ready. Damn. That's good stuff. I'm ready to run through a wall right now.
I was about to say,
my compete level's high right now, bro.
You sound fired up, man.
Fired up, ready to go. Yeah, I think this is really smart because I think that you tap into what it means to not just compete but play a sport, right? Like ultimately these are games. They're highly competitive, but like the game element of it, having fun, getting the juices flowing, and like when you can have kind of this fun with it, but also in the same breath focus everybody on a central theme, a thing you're trying to accomplish. That's good coaching right there. Obviously, look, they've got to get the scheme right. They've got to get the players right. That's the stuff that determines wins and losses more than anything else in this league. But as I've said all spring long, all summer long, I really think that they have set themselves up to get the most out of this group. And we're going to see what that most translates to in terms of wins and losses. But they have left no stone unturned in terms of motivation, in terms of focus, in terms of the way that they've rallied the troops. And I for one, really appreciate that.
Number 2.
And we get into what we actually got to do here, which is get the players that you're going to have. Who are the 53? It used to be at this point in camp, you already had made one cut. It was down into the 70s, and then you would ultimately get down to 53. But for DQ and company and Adam Peters, it's now a 53 or 90 straight down to 53. And DQ was asked if there's drawbacks to that at today's press conference.
No, I don't find the drawback in it because I do think there's value in finding that last piece, and so maybe the old days there was the 4th preseason game. Nowadays it's the 3rd, where there's more to see. And I would say from the roster spot, from the 40s through 53. And when we get towards the end of the week, we'll talk about New England into next week, and you'll hear us talk about a 70-man roster. Now that the practice squad has expanded and you have veterans, you have call-ups, so we kind of think even in a bigger picture than the 53. So I don't find the downside to it because a number of the people that you have here are going to be some ones that you're going to want to continue to work with moving forward, whether on the roster or on the practice squad. So no downside for me in that space.
I think that's interesting because we know who, let's say, the first 15 cuts are going to be. There's just dudes at the end of the roster, and it's not that they're bad football players or that, they never had a shot. Some of them, again, it was highly unlikely, but had they just absolutely balled out in camp, sure, you have a UDFA and Tyler Owens, it's probably going to make it. I don't think a lot of us, while we saw the promise of a guy with his size and speed and everything, it's like, man, this dude's got an uphill battle. And had he been just a normal UDFA, no one would have blinked twice. But he found a way to play himself on the roster. Mitchell Tinsley last year, and I think this year Tinsley's probably not going to make it. So I think that it just is less guys that you had to deal with at the end of camp, and you could be a little bit more focused. But maybe something clicks for a guy. Maybe having that extra 2 weeks or week or whatever it is with them, someone pops in a way you didn't expect. And whether they make the 53 or just make that 70-man roster, in Quinn's words, when you include the practice squad, that could certainly be worth it. And I totally get why coaches and GMs might prefer this way.
Number 3.
All right, continuing on our pick 6 at 6. Who are the toughest groups to evaluate? I will take this moment to plug Take Command, as Logan and I did our 53-man roster projection this morning. It'll come out tomorrow morning, so subscribe and it'll be in your feeds when you wake up, provided that you don't wake up at like 3 in the morning. But we had a full 53, and we'll share some thoughts on that here on the radio tomorrow. If not, just go ahead and do our own 53. But the 2 positions that Quinn named were certainly 2 that we had a really hard time with.
I thought 2 of the groups that have really stood out to me, just been consistent and deep, are at safety and at tight end. And just the practice habits, the willingness to go for it, their battles on special teams. So those have been 2 that have stood out to me, of consistently high-level effort, guys supporting one another. And so that's what you want as a coach, where there's really challenging spots and guys really pushing it. And I would say those are 2 of the positions that jump out to me.
And then amongst that, part of the reason that safety position particularly is hard is because Tyler Owens has played himself onto this roster, and that puts Jeremy Reeves, Derek Forrest, maybe a Tariq Castro-Fields at corner, where maybe you would have kept him, because you're really looking at like a DB that's more of a special teams guy spot. Some of these guys that we thought might have a better chance don't, because Tyler Owens took their spot. Here's Quinn on Owens.
Yeah, I've really been proud of the effort that he's put forth when we were really saying, hey, looking for competitive plays, looking for guys that were absolutely going for it. It was cool to see Saturday night him absolutely emptying the tank, both defensively and on special teams. So he's really been hitting his stride.
One of the things that makes naming a 53 hard is injuries, which brings us to
Number 4.
and the status of Jerzon Newton. Can we get an update, please, Coach Quinn?
Yep. So he has a dealing with like a soft tissue injury on his foot, not related to his surgery, and so he's off to the side doing work. And we're fortunate that I'm going to call it a preseason bye is here, because we're going to try to ramp him up towards the end of this week and hopefully into the practice for next week. So he's hit all the marks that we're wanting him to, but we're just trying to make sure there are no setbacks. He's worked like so hard, so I want to make sure like we just don't miss one thing of it.
Soft tissue injury in a foot is a weird one. There's a bunch of little muscles and like really important stuff in your foot, so like it definitely can happen. I also just wonder if it's like a really nasty bruise where like he can't push off and can't cut and can't do the things you need to be a powerful 300-pound football player. And maybe that's what's going on when you say it's like it's unrelated to the foot. There's definitely a chance that it's some of the muscles in the foot that he just hasn't been using them because he was in a boot and he was rehabbing and doing other stuff, and then all of a sudden you go run around in cleats and that changes it. I don't know, Anthony, do you wear cleats when you play flag?
Yeah.
Do you ever have like long stretches where you're not in cleats, then you all of a sudden put your cleats back on? And then all of a sudden you're like, damn, everything hurts.
Yeah. I've done it like between games. Say I have a game, a 2-game break, and then I have another game. I'll take my cleats off, put my Crocs on.
Well, I'm talking like, you don't get into your cleats for like a couple weeks, a couple months, like your off season. Then you get back into it.
Yeah.
That first time you put cleats on, not super fun.
Nope.
Track spikes, same thing. I even wore, I was doing a workout yesterday and I put on track flats, not even spikes. My calves and my feet today, whew, buddy.
Hurting.
Wouldn't call it a soft tissue injury, but I'm aware of the soft tissue in my feet.
Yes.
So if you're a big, giant 300-pound lineman, and you got all that pressure on your feet, and you haven't really been using all that musculature because it's been in a boot, and you've been trying to intentionally keep the pressure off of it so that the bone inside can heal after you had surgery, I could see why, I guess that could be a thing. Maybe you got stepped on and it's just a bruise. Whatever it is, hopefully it's subsiding and Johnny Newton can be back on the practice field sooner rather than later. As for his defensive line mates,
Number 5.
another position that was really tough when you start to do the 53 is the defensive end spot. KJ Henry feels like he's a lock. Andre Jones Jr., last year's draft pick, we had off of our 53, but is a guy that certainly is going to stick around, I would think, on the practice squad. But Javonte Jean-Baptiste is there. Obviously, Jamin Davis now feels like he has a roster spot. So just how many do they keep? How are some of these guys doing? Quinn today asked specifically about Andre Jones Jr. and KJ Henry, the 2 draft picks from last year.
Yes, I think what you're seeing at defensive end, and we play out on the edge a lot. We're really trying to bring, the speed and, the edge setting ability. And I've seen that from those guys. As the edge players, all downs, first, second, and third downs, the special teams roles for those guys. But really more than anything, I've just seen like their relentless style, their nature of how they want to go play. The play style is so important to us, and both of those two have really embodied, all I can do to make that happen. And so I've been very pleased with both of them.
I think one of the things that's really encouraging and is kind of interesting about the Quinn program and what decisions Peters has to make coming up is nobody's made it easy based off the fact that they're not really trying that hard. Like, they're not playing hard. They're not playing with urgency. They're not doing the bare minimums that Dan Quinn requires of his players in terms of detail and play style. It's a matter of how well do you do the job and how well do we think we can develop you to do the job 6, 12, and 18 weeks from now. That's the question they're trying to answer. And in that way, like, kudos to Andre Jones Jr., kudos to Javonte Jean-Baptiste, kudos to KJ Henry, kudos to Jamin Davis for just playing their asses off week in, week out, snap in, snap out, that is such a difficult decision. And that's ultimately both what you want as a coach and as a GM and what you dread as a coach and a GM is that everybody performs their best, and then it's really hard for you to make the decision because you don't want to say, like, hey, your best wasn't good enough. That's a hard thing to tell someone versus, yeah, you really didn't do what we asked you to do. So, sorry, we're cutting you. It's like, hey, man, you did everything you could, and it's just that guy's better. That's hard. All right, you did everything you could do right now, but we hope to have you back on practice squad, and we're going to try to get you to where you are better because that makes us better. And those are the hard discussions. Those are the hard things this time of year. And so KJ Henry, I think, has played his way safely onto the roster. Andre Jones Jr. in more of a fight with the Jamin Davises of the world, with the Javonte John Baptiste in the world, but has certainly given it, I would say, more than the old college try. Done a really excellent job. And then, of course, there is this factor.
Number 6.
Last thing that we'll touch on today in our Pick 6, as we give you some of the biggest storylines, biggest talking points of the day from Command Land, is special teams and how that factors in to a roster decision. And it starts with when you have guys in college, how you evaluate where you even want to put them in the first place. Because there's some, like Bryson Tremaine played on special teams when he was at Stanford. Other guys didn't ever play a snap of special teams because most guys that make it to the NFL are studs at their actual offensive or defensive position. So to start off, Dan Quinn asked how you evaluate college players for special teams roles.
Yeah, because you're right that if they're playing a lot in college, they're probably not playing a lot on special teams. So the rookie player that you're developing on special teams, you have to remind them, man, this is just football. This is just like making a tackle or, running a route. This is how you do it. For the offensive players, we spend some extra time on tackling to make sure we're not leading with our head, we're leading with our shoulder, because that's the person that we're trying to train even more. They don't spend a lot of time on tackling. Talk about the wide receiver who plays on special teams. Like, we don't want them leading with their head. Own a leverage, hit with your shoulder. So like today we had a big presentation on tackling and breaking tackles, and we do it for the whole team, not just for the defense, because we recognize on the team side of things that's going to be there. We've tried to make sure we have a vision for every player, that we bring in, what they can do, where their skills are. It takes a while, but coming in, if you see a certain speed or a certain length, you say, I think he could be a wing and punt. I think he could, be a returner. I think he would be an interior guy in punt return. So you try to find unique things and then make that come to life. Because quite honestly, the rookies don't have a vision for what their special teams is going to look like. It's up to us to show them what that vision can be and look like. And I think Tyler's done a good job of that, and so have some others. But as a rookie, he's demonstrating that kind of speed and physicality.
And then, of course, you have the question of what actually differentiates guys on special teams. That could be the key to them being one of the final guys on the right side of the roster cut.
Yeah, it's a good question, Ben, because I think it's there's a little bit of both. And so you'll hear special teams coaches or head coaches talk about the big four, which is punt, punt return, kickoff, and kickoff return. And so to be a core four player, boy, you better be good in space and have speed. Because those fourth down plays on punt and punt return, the kickoff now and kickoff return ramped up, can I make plays in space? So there'll be some players that will have a featured role mostly on special teams. Now, that could be one or two, offensive players or defensive players where they may not have a leading role on offense or defense. Then there's the player that has roles on both. I may be a backup or a complimentary starter. I'm, playing 50% of the plays, and then you may hear a guy, hey, we'll play him on two of the four. I can play him on punt and kickoff return. So first level is the Jeremy Reeves of the world. That's just established, has it, special teams value, impacting plays. Then it gets into the player that's the complimentary starter that plays, quite a bit, but still has room for, for at least two phases. So the fun part, what's going to happen in 2024 is which two of the phases have been, let's call it somewhat dormant, for a few years, they are growing again. And it's really cool to see. It's still work in progress, I would say, and I think it will be a little bit fluid as it goes into the beginning part of the season. But I am excited to see it, and I think it's really good for not just the Jeremy Reeves of the world who, make their mark on special teams, but also just for the energy of the game, the players, how we do things. So I'm really pumped about it.
And I happen to think we haven't seen a lot of what the Commanders want to do on special teams. We haven't seen Jamison Crowder even back to return a punt. And I think right now he's still the number one punt returner. So there's a lot to see once we get into the regular season with the kickoff and kickoff return, but also for this team, the way they're going to handle punt returns and what they want to see from their guys back there. And that can also change dramatically if someone makes a big play or a big mistake, frankly, but hopefully a big play on Sunday night against New England. That's our pick six biggest storylines of the day from Ashburn.
This is the Hoffman Show on the T980 and the Odyssey app.